Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings. Now let's get straight into it. So today we're diving into Revelation chapter 20. Revelation, the 20th chapter. Shout out to the brother Phenom 50. He asked about this, and in his comment, he said, "Good lesson as always." I appreciate that, brother. Can you guys do a lesson on Revelation, the 20th chapter, especially dealing with 1,000 year with Satan being released? I'm pretty sure it's not talking about the actual Satan. So you're right, brother. If you're referring to, I believe you're referring to starting at verse 7 when it says, "And when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison." Yes, so Satan is a spiritual demon, meaning he is not a spirit that man can see, at least in a physical form, meaning him and himself. Satan is, it's just like, think about it like a lust spirit or a spirit of envy. These things can get inside of people and they can exhibit those demons, but the actual physical lustly demon you can't see, or the spirit of envy and so on and so forth. All right, jealousy, whatever the case. You can't actually see these spirits, and that's how Satan is. You can't actually see him. So this is not referring to Satan kind of coming out of prison, a red Satan with horn feet, which is really that design was after a pagan deity. But anyways, also the brother said, and I think it's talking about the 1,000 years in Europe back in the day, back in the day. And I believe you're referring to the beginning of the chapter. So let's go into it because there are 2,000 year periods here. So let's go ahead and start right here at the top. Now this is Revelation chapter 20. And by the way, this is going to be a lot that we're going to go into. So just bear with me. I do have a lot of information I want to break down, a lot of history. And we do have to grab, some other witnesses here in the scripture. So bear with me here on this lesson. I'm not sure how many parts it will be. I know minimum 2, but it may even go out to 3, depending on how much we end up getting into, Lord willing. All right. So first, you know what? I'll just do an overview, because what I believe is a little bit different from what I see a lot of brothers, what a lot of brothers believe about Revelation, the 20th chapter. Now here, I saw an angel come down from heaven having a key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. So the bottomless pit, I see a lot of brothers say the bottomless pit is Europe, the whole continent of Europe, which I do not believe to be the case at all. I mean, I just never seen the scriptures recognize that whole continent of Europe. So that kind of just doesn't make sense to me. For real. Now, the dragon, the old serpent, devil, and Satan, in verse 2, that is referring to the so-called white man. That is referring to ESAU for sure. And bound him 1,000 years. That is during the medieval times, the quote-unquote dark ages. All right. In a time where so-called black people actually ruled in Europe. So, to me, that's quite clear that that's exactly what verse 2 is talking about. And then verse 3, 1,000 years being after the so-called white man. And when I say the so-called white man, I ain't talking about, your co-workers and things like that. Excuse me, and things like that. I'm talking about your so-called elite, the top of the chain, because really the scriptures only deal with, the kings of the earth, the tops of the nations. They tend to be the movers and shakers of how prophecy fulfills, not just your average everyday person. And that's who this is really more going into. But anyways, and then you have verse 4 going into the great tribulation in the first rulership of the Hamashiach or Christ or Yahweh. All right, then that first resurrection of the elect. Then verse 6 going into that first rulership with Christ for 1,000 years as the elect is building up the kingdom. Y'all don't trip. Israel will reign forever. Don't trip. So I know sometimes brothers worry, hey, is this saying that the scripture saying that that Israel is only going to reign for 1,000 years, and then you got to go into another captivity, or it's going to be another Bible got to be written. Nah, man, look, Israel will reign forever, so don't trip. Verse 7, this is referring to the so-called white man coming out of his captivity after Yahushua comes back and dooms them into their land. Well, I say dooms them in their land, meaning puts them into captivity in their land, which to me is referring to when it says the bottomless pit. Magog is talking about the Caucasus Mountains, because that's really one of the main places that the so-called white man is from. All right. And then from there, you have Esau trying to take one more shot at Israel, and the Most High destroying them forever. All right. And then you have the judgment. All right. The great judgment, or judgment day, as we call it conventionally. Okay. Where the books are open and everyone is judged according to their works, good or bad. All right. And then you have the second death, meaning when if you're not found to make it into the everlasting kingdom, then you will be cast to death forever, with no chance at repentance, no chance at resurrection. And this is when death and hell, meaning the grave, this is when death will cease to be a thing, just like it was before Adam's fall. All right, Adam and Eve's fall. All right, there was no death in the world, and the Most High intended it to be that way. All right, and that's a large, super large overview. But now let's go into the specifics here. I just wanted to start out, giving brothers and sisters my perspective, and then we're gonna dive in. And I really want to talk more about all of the different the different end time prophecies that are going to happen, like Jacob's trouble, or the Great Tribulation, the World War III. All right, World War III, or the Great War that's mentioned in Joel, the 3rd chapter. All right, really all throughout the scriptures. All right, and then the first rulership, the 1,000-year rulership, and what's going to be taking place then. And then, Esau coming out and trying to attack Israel one last time. And then the kingdom after that. I want to go into all these different end time prophecies, really, Lord willing, in time. But it's so much to cover, man. That's why however long we've been going, we haven't even touched on verse 1 yet. But let's get it, man. Let's jump into it. All right, so this is Revelation, the 20th chapter. In verse 1, it says, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand." All right, so the angels in heaven determine captivities. All right, because captivity is really as much as spiritual as it is physical. And that kind of reminds me, a little bit off topic, but our people worry so much about things like slavery that we don't pay attention to how much captivity or spiritual slavery that we in right now. All right. Of course, I'm not saying the physical slavery that our people went into wasn't a massacre, because it was. All right. But, we aren't in physical chains right now. Let's be real, for the most part, at least. All right, no telling what's going on up there in Middle America and things like that. But for the most part, at least, Lord willing, we're not in physical chains. So, but we are in spiritual bondage. We are in spiritual chains for sure. All right, as a whole, as a nation. And, the scriptures say to love our brothers. We do the complete opposite. Most of our music is geared towards, rap that talks about killing our brothers. All right. Scriptures say not to commit adultery, but we seek pride in sleeping with another man's woman, so on and so forth. Really, the point is that, what it says here, that the angel has come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. This meaning the angels have that spiritual chain that controls who's in bondage or not. As far as the bottomless pit, I will go into, showing maps, so on and so forth, why I believe that this is the Caucasus Mountains and not just Russia. All right. I mean, excuse me, not Russia. That's Magog. That brothers say is Russia. The bottomless pit, brothers say that's Europe because they don't have natural resources and things like that. But no, I don't believe that to be the case at all. All right, let's get verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. Like the brother Phenom 50 was saying, look, Satan, this is not referring to Satan in a physical form, man. Like Satan just came out, and he in bondage and got a bunch of chains. He just kind of wiggling for 1,000 years trying to get out that thing. And then, he kind of pop out. That's not what's going on. It's a spiritual demon that can inhabit anything or anybody. And brothers might know that spirit might be on your woman. On a lot of brothers' women. You know what I'm saying? You just wake up, look in the room and like, damn, there goes Satan. But it's referring to a so-called white man. All right, that dragon, let's start with the dragon because it says here he lay hold on the dragon. All right, that old serpent. That dragon, that old serpent, is talking about the so-called white man. Look, this is not a racial thing, by the way. This is a nation thing, not a racial thing. This is a nation thing. The nation of the Edomites happen to have the characteristics, of of Satan, of the devil. Being conquerors, destroyers, usurpers. They like to go into Aboriginals' land and take their names. Like in Greece, they call themselves Grecians, but really the original Grecians were the Japhites. All right. You got the so-called Jewish man saying he's a Jew when he knows good and well he ain't. All right. That's a deceiver. That's Satan. That's the devil. That's that old serpent. And it says that old serpent because this is the original serpent, that old serpent, back in Genesis, the 3rd chapter. All right. In the 2nd and 3rd chapter. All right. We can grab that real quick, but I know brothers know the serpent. We even got taught that in church. That's why it says that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. Okay. But again, this is to go back to that. This is not a racial thing. I'm not saying that just because I'm a so-called black man, which I am. Before anybody try to scoff, oh, you just saying that, you saying the white man's the devil. Look here, man. It's only facts. The so-called white man is the ruling class on planet Earth. That's just a fact. All right. The Romans are the ones that killed Yahweh Shai Christ, and they were so-called white men at that time, right? That's a fact. The Most High said he literally hates Esau in Romans 9 and 13. That's a fact. Okay. And the society we live in, which is ruled by the so-called white man, is an anti-Bible society. All right. It's a Greco-Roman society. It's a Babylonian society. All right. Meaning that it's anti-Bible. It's completely against the commandments. Everything is disregarded. All right. Everything is worldly. And that's the end thing to do. All right. It's not an end thing to be righteous. You tell somebody you keep the commandments, or you aspiring to keep the commandments. All right. You're aspiring to be a man of the Lord, and see what happened to you for the most part. You get called lame, or you doing too much with that Bible thing and so on and so forth. That's because, the so-called white man said it to be that way. So I'm not just saying that just to say it. All right. It's not a racial thing. It's just, it's just how the so-called white man has moved throughout history. And it's just facts to prove that. Ain't nothing you could do about that, no matter who you are. Okay. But anyway, let's go into Ezekiel chapter 29. And I'm doing a lot of talking here because I'm really just trying to set the foundation for the rest of the chapter, so it makes sense. So I have to go into the certain things right now. But let's get Ezekiel chapter 29 and verse 1. It says, in the 10th year, In the 10th month, in the 12th day of the month, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Verse 3, speak and say, Thus saith the Lord God, or power, or Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is my own, and I have made it for myself. You see, a dragon is really just a lone serpent. Okay, that's all it really is, a dragon in the scriptures. You may think of like a fire-breathing dragon, but at this time, a dragon is just a lone serpent. Okay, and in context here, a serpent is referring to a deceiver. All right, and who deceives more than a so-called white man? Like I've been saying, that's his forte, man. He act like he coming in with peace, but he really got a knife in his back, or really more fittingly a sword, since that's what Esau's blessing was in the first place. All right, and point is though, yeah, man, Esau is one of the biggest deceivers to ever live. All right, he wants his beliefs and ideologies to come off as harmless, but really he coming to destroy and conquer, and mostly through subterfuge, meaning deceitfully. All right, like you have, these Planned Parenthood facilities in the so-called black neighborhoods that's destroying our people. All right, but it's marketed as a good thing. The so-called so-called white, the so-called black woman, at least, on as a whole, she believes that's a good thing to have abortion clinics right around the corner. All right, she believes abortion is a great thing. Not all of them, of course, but a good amount of them believe that. All right, and you have Esau that headed all these different government programs designed to keep our people from wanting to advance and be better. We got foods, the GMO foods. You got pork that's pushed. About the American breakfast. It's hard to get any breakfast anywhere without them primarily having pork as the main meat. All right, and not to even mention that quote unquote COVID vaccine that was pushed so heavily on the people that, mothers ain't talking about no more. We just acting like that just didn't happen nowadays in quote unquote 2023. But if you didn't get that vaccine, you was just a villain, or may I say a devil, just for not getting a vaccine that you ain't know nothing about. All right, things like this is, why the scriptures say that the so-called white man is a devil. And I haven't even touched on 1,000,000% of one of the atrocities that the so-called white man has done since he's been out of captivity. When the so-called white man is not in the mountains, man, when he not where he need to be at in the Caucasus Mountains or in Mount Seir, man, it's just hell on earth. It is what it is. I'm not saying that to, again, be racial or anything like that. For these people that try to come on here and act like that, I'm just telling the truth. It is what it is. All right. Esau is from Mount Seir, and he moved over to the Caucasus Mountains, and every time he come out, it's a price to pay. And that's why the Most High is going to banish them forever. But anyways, yo, gotta go in there right now on the so-called white man. But I have to lay the foundation. And again, one more time, when I say the so-called white man, I am referring to the so-called elite, meaning the heads of this nation, not just regular Esau walking around here. Okay? So let's start at the top again. It says, And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. So that's that angel having the key to captivity, or the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Verse 2, and he laid hold on the dragon. All right. You see, Pharaoh, I meant to touch on that. You see, Pharaoh was referred to as a dragon because he was the great deceiver at that time. Now you have the great deceiver being the so-called white man right now. Just like you have Israel is the Most High's chosen nation. Okay. Satan has a chosen nation that he works through, which is the so-called white man right now. All right. That old serpent. All right, meaning the original deceiver, the original serpent that beguiled Eve. And then Eve, taught that madness to her man, Adam, which is, excuse me, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. What is this referring to? This is referring to what you call the Middle Ages. All right, let me give verse 3 too. And cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years, should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. We in that little season right now where the so-called white man is loose. All right, we in that little season right now. But to go back here, I think I want to touch. Yeah, I pulled up some scriptures to touch on the rest of these words here. Devil and Satan. Okay, so why am I saying all these things about Satan and that being the so-called white man? Can we back that up with scripture? Yes, we can. Let's get Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9. We did a full breakdown on this. All right, it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Actually, let's go up. Let's go up. Let's start at verse 3. The red dragon, Satan. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. We can go into that. We've already done it. Here's the more important part here in the next few verses. Verse 4. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Verse 5, and she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up into the Most High, into his throne. So this is referring to Yahushua when he was born, and you had Herod that was trying to kill him as soon as he was born. Okay, because he knew who Yahushua was. All right. Let's get that. Let's get Matthew chapter 2 and verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So Herod, he was slaughtering all of the Israelite babies from the age of 2 on down, trying to kill Yahushua because he inquired that Yahushua had been born. Okay, and we know this, so I'm not going to go all the way into it. I just wanted to prove more of why I'm saying the dragon is the so-called white man. It's not just me wanting to say something, racial or, anything personal, my own personal feelings. It's just what the scriptures say. It's not me. All right. You see in Revelation chapter 12 that this man, or the nation that this man represented, it says, behold, a great red dragon. Okay. And this dragon stood before the woman, which is Israel. Okay. We're not going to get every single scripture because we went over this a few times. Maybe I'll even put them on screen as I'm going over some of the scriptures, so we don't, just for the sake of time. All right, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. This is referring to Herod. And Herod was what? A quote unquote Idumean. All right, he was the son of Antipater of Idumea. He was an Idumean, aka an Edomite. All right, Idumea is just Greek for an Edomite. Okay, these were Edomite leaders. The Herod, the Herod family was Herod Antipas, Herod the Great, Herod Agrippa. Okay, they were Edomites. All right, which is the so-called white man today, which is what Revelation 20 called a dragon, that old serpent, the devil, and Satan. Okay, so it's not just me saying that. The scriptures are saying that too, and it can be confirmed. Also, what is a devil? What is a devil? Let's get 1 John chapter 3 verse 4. It says, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. That's what sin is. What's crazy is that as much as sin is talked about in the church system, at least in my church system and most of all the people that I know, we were never even taught what sin was. And it's really simply put here in the scriptures. Okay. Now let's get verse 10. It says, well, let's get verse 7. Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteousness, or is righteous, even as he is righteous. He that committeth sin is of the devil. He that committeth sin is of the devil. Okay. For the devil sinneth from the beginning, that old serpent from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of the Most High was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. So this is referring to that old serpent. All right. But also, isn't Yahushua, the Son of the Most High, coming to destroy this kingdom? Okay. So the kingdoms of the earth shall be the kingdoms of Christ, like it details for you in Revelation, the 11th chapter. Okay, and who in rulership right now. So Yahushua might destroy the works of the devil. This is also, it could be referring to the so-called white man today too as well. Okay, so that's why he is a devil. And I'm going to show you even more of why I'm saying that too, because we're not finished. All right, verse 9. Whosoever is born of the Most High doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of the Most High. All right. Verse 10. In this the children of the Most High are manifest, and the children of the devil. Okay. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of the Most High, neither he that loveth not his brother. Okay. Esau, Edomites, they're the children of the devil. All right, because they committed sin. And he that committed sin is of the devil. Okay? So it's very simple. I'm not saying anything that, it's not in the scriptures, just for those that are scoffing. Brothers already know what the deal is, but just in case. Okay? I got 2 Thessalonians here. We'll get this really quickly. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 1. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach, or reads here Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Verse 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. All right, what they call in church the quote unquote antichrist. It's not just one antichrist though. All right, verse 4, who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called the Most High, or God, here as it reads, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's the so-called white man. Okay, because he is going to be, or is, the last nation in rulership before Yahushua comes and destroys this place. Okay, so I'm not saying the so-called white man is the devil and Satan and everything just because. And let's get more on that. Let's get more on that because I think it is important to set this foundation right from the beginning. So that way, as we continue to go down, it's going to make more sense of why I'm saying a bottomless pit is the Caucasus Mountains and not the whole of Europe. Because the so-called white man is not from Europe. All right. He didn't inhabit Europe first. All right. That was, well, very first would be most of the tribe of Japheth from a lot of that area. And then you had a lot of the tribe of Dan, really a tribe of Judah too, and the Phoenicians, things of that nature that inhabited that land. So, the so-called white man is not from Europe just because they're in Europe right now. Okay. A lot of that took place after the fall of the so-called black rulership in Europe, especially after the bubonic plague, which they called the Black Plague because it killed a lot of so-called black people at that time. That was the beginning of the fall of so-called black rulership in Europe. But anyways, let's go to Genesis chapter 25. Let's go here where it all started. Okay. Now, let's start here, verse 19. It says Isaac's sons. Genesis chapter 25 and verse 19. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham beget Isaac. And you know what? We're going to go straight to it because I know a lot of brothers and sisters here, they know what it is, but we still got to build a foundation. I'm going to just start at verse 23. It says, and the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now, see, when I said that Esau would be in captivity to Israel, I wasn't just making things up. Yes, the elder has already served the younger too in the Middle Ages or during the Byzantine Empire or just overall so-called black rulership in Europe, but it's going to take place also in the end times. Let's keep going. Verse 24, and when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb, referring to Rebekah. In the first, verse 25, in the verse, it's like it, brothers. In the first came out red, all over like an hairy garment, and they call his name Esau. All right, the first came out red. As you see, you won't read pretty much anywhere else in the scriptures where a physical description was given to anyone like it is here with Esau. All right, that was different from anybody else because before this time, everybody was a person of color. At this time, every nation was a person of color, or people were people of color, excuse me. All right, Ham, Japheth, Shem, all of their descendants all the way up until this point. All right. Verse 26, and after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. Okay. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. See, a man of the field, a caveman. See, Esau is a caveman and he know it. I mean, think about it. Have you ever seen a so-called black caveman before? Anytime they show like Neanderthals or, they have these little shows and movies with cavemen. You ever seen a black caveman before? They're trying to tell you who they are, man. That's why they never have a so-called black caveman. And Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. Because the so-called black man just be chilling. A plain man, just like a little strong drink, a woman on this side, and a little sports, man. He'd be good, dwelling in tents. All right. But point here is, though, that you have Esau, this prophecy from the very beginning. All right. And the Most High hated Esau because he already knew what Esau would do to his chosen people. He knew that Israel or Jacob was going to be chosen. He knew that he would be, and he and his progeny would be ruling in the kingdom. And he knew that his elder brother would cause all this chaos and confusion on earth. And that's why the Most High hated him in the womb. Okay, and that's why he was said to serve the younger. This prophecy is going to be fulfilled in the kingdom, all right, until their eventual, eradication. All right. Esau was a cunning hunter, man of the field. Okay, a caveman. All right, but we're gonna get more. I don't think I'm just capping. We gonna get more. Let me build up. Let me build up. All right. Let's get Genesis chapter 27 and verse 11. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. So Esau was hairy. Okay, just like he was in the Middle Ages, which we're going to go into that in just a second. But when you look up the word hairy here, and it says, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man. Let's look at some of the words that Esau was described as. First of all, it says Sa'ir in the Hebrew, Strong's H8163. All right, Sa'ir. It says the KJV translates Strong's H8163 in the following manner. Kid, which is a baby goat, 28 times. You got goat. We did the goat worship agenda here. You got devil. You see, the so-called white man was described as a devil. It ain't just me just saying it. It's a satyr, which is a half man, half goat. Okay, hairy or rough. Hairy, just like I said, a caveman, a hairy caveman. That's what the so-called white man is. A he goat, buck, as sacrificial animal. It's like Esau is going to be the sacrificial animal of the elect. When Yahushua comes back, we're going to get that too as well. I'm making a lot of statements right now that we haven't actually gotten the scripture, but I'm telling you, we are going to get them. I'm not just saying all these things for no reason. Definition B says satyr may refer to a demon-possessed goat like the swine of Gadara. So again, you see here the word devil was used twice in the same word that described Esau. So it makes sense that you get to Revelation, the 20th chapter, and you see the word dragon, that old serpent, the devil, Satan, all being used as words to describe the so-called white man, or and how he was bound for 1,000 years. Okay. Now let's get Job chapter 30 and verse 29. It says, I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls. We're going to get Job chapter 30 again here, relatively soon. But as you see, it says, I am a brother to dragons. All right. I am a brother to dragons. I am a brother to Esau. Jacob is a brother to Esau, to dragons. Esau is the great red dragon mentioned in scripture. Now let's go over verse 2 again. It says here, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which says here, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. When was that 1,000 years? Okay, this is the time when the so-called white man was out of rulership in Europe. Okay, for that 1,000 years. Now let's get this. Now this is the history.com's page on the Byzantine Empire. This is all nonsense. This is all either painted over or just a fake painting. All the royalty at this time were so-called black people. But let's get this entry here. It says, the Byzantine Empire was a vast and powerful civilization with origins that can be traced to AD 330, when the Roman Emperor Constantine I dedicated a new Rome on the site of the ancient Greek colony of Byzantine. So why is it called New Rome if it's just, they were all so-called white people from the beginning? Why did he call it New Rome? Now, I know he instituted Christianity and everything, but still, why is that? Anyways, it says, though the western half of the Roman Empire crumbled and fell in AD 476, So, like we in 2023, you just go back to 476. This is what this is referring to, AD 476. Now, keep in mind that the western half of the Roman Emperor crumbled and fell, which is talked about in Revelation, the 17th chapter. We're going to get that. All right. The beast that was and is. But anyways, it says the eastern half survived for 1,000 more years, spawning a rich tradition of art, literature, and learning, and serving as a military buffer between Europe and Asia. The Byzantine Empire finally fell in 1453 after an Ottoman army stormed Constantinople during the reign of Constantine the 11th. So, as you see here, the Byzantine Empire, or the Holy Roman Empire. All right, the Eastern Empire of Rome was around for 1,000 years. Okay, these are the 1,000 years that the so-called black man was, he was in rulership at that time. Okay, now it's way too much history to go into because it's way too many countries. 1,000 years is way too long to even try to begin to go into the so-called black rulership in Europe. So, I mean, I'm picking, I'm just going to put up some family crest here, show some of the nobility in Europe. But as I was going through this lesson, I was trying to find a way to quickly summarize it, and I just can't. It's too much history. I may put some books that brothers and sisters can check out if they need to on the screen right now, but it's a vast amount of history, man, for it's 1,000 years. And do not let people lie to you and tell you that the so-called white man ruled in Europe during the Middle Ages or the quote-unquote Dark Ages. Anytime so-called black people are affected, they like to put that word dark there, all right, or like the Dark Ages in Greek. In Greece was ruled by so-called black people at that time. They like to do that. But anyways, I'm just putting up some of the heraldry and some of the family crests. But point is, though, we did rule during this time. For the sake of this lesson, though, which is not specifically just about, it's a fake pain, y'all, which is not specifically just about, the Middle Ages. We're not going to go all the way into it, but just know that we did. And that's the 1,000 years that verse 2 is talking about, because the so-called white man got cast down and he was put back in the mountains where he came from, man. This was the so-called white man, at least, to a certain degree, not every so-called white man or nothing, but this is where the so-called white man was during the Middle Ages, being described as the wild man. Okay, it says here in this entry, the wild man of the woods, woodwose, is a mythical figure and motif that appears in the art and literature of medieval Europe. All right, this is the Middle Ages. As you see in the history of Europe, the Middle Ages or medieval period lasted approximately from the late 5th to the late 15th century, 1,000 years. Okay, similar to the post-classical period of global history. This period began with the fall of the Western Roman Emperor in 476 AD, and ended brief entry ends there. But the point is, I'm just trying to show you this is 1,000 years, and the so-called white man, he was in the caves. All right, he did have a full body hair, just like we showed that Esau was hairy. Okay, they had to be civilized, shaven down and civilized. And the so-called black man is the one that did that to their own demise, really, and cultured them. All right, comparable to the satyr or faun type in classical mythology, and to Sylvanus, the Roman god of the woodlands. Remember that satyr? We had just saw that in the description of Esau. It's described as a satyr. All right, you see some of the same words being used because that's the so-called white man. Okay. All right, it says the defining characteristics of the figure is its wildness. And by the way, it says a mythical figure. This is not a mythical figure. This is really what the so-called white man was looking like. A lot of times they try to act like, certain real history is just mythos. So that way, don't have to admit what's really going on, but they still can show you it, but not tell you the full truth about it. All right, like when they talk about the founders of Troy, they try to act like these are mythical figures because they knew that there were Israelites, or so-called black men, that founded Troy. Okay, so on and so forth. But anyways, it was consistently depicted as being covered with hair. Esau was hairy, all right, red all over like a hairy garment, all right, and Jacob said that he was a hairy man. Images of wild men appear in the carved and painted roof bosses where intersecting ogive meaning Canterbury Cathedral, in positions where one is also likely to encounter the vegetal green man. Okay, sound like Shrek to me. The image of the wild man survived to appear as supporter of the heraldic coat of arms, especially in Germany, well into the 16th century. Renaissance engravers in Germany and Italy were particularly fond of wild men, wild women, and wild families, with examples from Gour and Albert Durer, among others. So you have wild men, wild women, and wild families. If this was just like a myth, like a Bigfoot or something, you wouldn't have a whole wild family. Like, this is a real thing. All right, this is what the so-called white man really was looking like in the Middle Ages when he was cast out for these 1,000 years. Okay, and that's why it says here, and I cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him, meaning, he couldn't go out, like it says here, and deceive the nations for those 1,000 years. Okay, then after that, he must be loose a little season. Okay, this is what they were looking like. Believe it or not, you ain't got to take my word for it. Just, continue to do your own, your own investigations and research yourself, and you'll see all the same. Okay, this is what they were looking like in the Middle Ages. Okay, the normal Middle English term also used to the present day with woodwolves and woodwolves. Okay, I could go into all of this, but it's only really one more part I wanted to grab. As you see, fawn again, they were hairy. It says here, various languages and traditions include names suggesting affinities with Orcus, a Roman and Italic god of death. For many years, people in Tyrol called the wild man Orc, or Lorc, or Norglin, while in parts of Italy, he was the Orco or Horco. The French ogre has the same derivation. Now, when you look up the word here for the bottomless pit, what will you see? Let's look at G12, abyssos, bottomless pit. It says bottomless, unbounded, the abyss, the pit, the immeasurable depth of Orcus. We just read about what the so-called wild men, what they are associated with, Orcus, a very deep gulf or chasm in the lowest parts of the earth, used as the common receptacle of the dead, and especially as the abode of demons. The abode of demons, like, cavemen are in the abode of, the underworld, just like you have here in Orcus. Let me go to Orcus to make more sense too. See, this is Orcus, the god of the underworld. This is modern Aerophilia, the gardens of the Orcus mouth. Yeah, this is called the Orcus mouth. Look, just like a cave where the so-called white man from. All right, or like you have the devil that's down in a cave or in a quote-unquote underworld. It all links up, man. If you really paying attention, so-called white man letting you know exactly who he is and why he's called the devil, why he's called Satan. All right, it's a historic thing. It's a biblical thing. It's not just, you know, me wanting that to be true or whatever. Now, look at this tapestry here. Let me kind of go out here. So you can see that the wild men were actual men that lived. Hold on, let me see. Okay, I had this pulled up. It says Blackamoors as 14th century Germany's Strasbourgs. So it says this interesting 14th century tapestry captures the events of the European migration period when the Gauls, Celts, and Blackamoors of Europe, a single African people, that's not true, but lost the effort in defending their villages, towns, and way of life in Italy, Spain, England, France, and Germany to the Italic, Franco-German, and Slavic people who replaced them and at the time attacked with rocks and clubs. It is a surprise to see that it was the Moors, notice their headbands, who were portrayed as the first Strasbourgs and bore the royal names. So essentially what's happening here is that you see the wildmen, see them right here. This is hair. This is the artist trying to describe them with hair. You see they barefoot, looking uncivilized. They attacking with clubs and rocks and just things they could pick up. Hair all over, except for like they barely in their face, but just hair all over. Attacking the nobility, the so-called black. You see all those so-called black faces? These people are in actual, castles and kingdoms, according to this tapestry. All right, trying to defend off with bow and arrows, the wild men trying to come in. Okay. Now you think this is just made up? Somebody just decided to paint this because this is an actual tapestry that came from the Middle Ages. And it's almost, kind of look like fringes there on their garments. But either way, you think this is just made up? Somebody just made up this tapestry? No, this is, really an artist actually trying to describe what they saw, from the wild men. All right, which was just Esau in a, an uncivilized state, which he was when he was bound this 1,000 years. Okay. So, again, don't come at me. This is just history. Okay. Unless you can prove that this is fake, go ahead. Disprove that. All right. And you also have, biblical support here too as well in Daniel chapter 7. Now it says Daniel chapter 7, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream of the visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told him the sum of the matters. Of course, this is the vision of the four beasts. Okay. What we're going to focus on is the fourth beast, because that's the beast that is still alive today. The beast meaning it's not literal beasts. All right. The system, the beast, the rulership that's still in effect today. All right. Which is from the so-called white man. All right. Just the Roman rulership all over again. Really. All right, let's look at verse 7. It says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Okay, you see the same descriptions that we saw in Revelation chapter 12. Okay. So the reason I got that though, let's go to Revelation chapter 13. All right. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him power and his seat and great authority. When it says the dragon gave him power, means Satan. Okay, because this is a satanic society. All right, Job 9:24 told you that, the God of this world is Satan, essentially. All right, that's the idea there, essentially. Okay, Revelation chapter 13:3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. Talking about the Roman rulership, or the Romans. It was wounded to death during this 1,000-year period. Okay, it was wounded to death, meaning they were shut up. All right, Esau was shut up so he could deceive the nations no more. Okay, but then after that, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Okay, so this is when Satan got out, when the deadly wound was healed. When I say Satan, now I'm referring to the so-called white man again. Okay, this is when they were allowed to gain rulership again on the earth. And all the world wondered after the beast. Is not America pretty much the center point of the entire world? All right. You can go pretty much anywhere in the world and they've heard of America before. But there's a lot of countries that a lot of people in America don't know anything about, but they know about America. They pretty much know everything that's going on here. They know the president. They know all the different happenings. All right. Over there, and they call it in the States. No matter if it's in Europe, over there in Africa, wherever continent it is, like pretty much the whole world wonders after this beast known as the United States of America. Okay, because this is pretty much Babylon HQ. All right, verse 4. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. They worshiped the dragon. They worshiped the beast. All right, they worship all the deities on the left-hand side, like we go into all the time. That gives power into Satan. All right, that's how they keep the society going. Okay, by worshiping the spiritual demon Satan. That's how they keep the society going, man. That's what gives them power. And that's what powers the system. It's not powered by the Most High in Yahushua, man. It's quite clear to see. All right, all these different abortions are pretty much just blood sacrifices, okay, to keep the society going. That's how they appease their gods and keep the power going and feeding the system. You understand? All right, it says, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Do not people marvel at the amount of military might that this place has? Okay. But again, this is the same beast written about in Daniel chapter 7, that deadly wound was healed. So again, verse 3, as it were wounded to death, the beast, which is Rome. I believe I had something up here on that. Yeah. So even the so-called white scholars know that that Greece is that fourth beast. Okay, everybody pretty much knows that. All right. The 7 world emperors, it says that first beast was the Babylonian Empire, then the Medo-Persian, then the Greece, and then the fourth beast was Rome. Okay. Now, of course, there's some things off on here. I'm just using this as a demonstration. I just saw this and pulled it up so we can get a visual. But point is, though, yeah, so Rome was that fourth beast. And you see right around the same time period again, that's when it was wounded to death. But when it came back into power, starting around the quote unquote Enlightenment period and things of that nature, that's when you started to see, all hell break loose on earth again. Right? So that's when they gained rulership, and they really start gaining rulership really more towards like the 1800s or so, but that's when it began, around the 1500s, into the 1400s or so. But anyways, last verse in Revelation 13. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Okay, that great mouth speaking great things and blasphemies is the media. Okay, that's that power given to them, because whatever they say pretty much goes. They set the standard of what's truth or not. So that way, whatever is the truth that they want to hide, all they have to do is just put up enough propaganda, and people are going to accept it to be truth just because the major media outlets say so. Okay. And if you believe otherwise, you're going to be counted as, crazy or a conspiracy theorist. All right. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. That's a time period now. All right. Like Daniel in the 11th chapter. All right. But that's pretty much, of course, we can keep going, but Revelation 13 deserves its own breakdown. And this is the verse that we grabbed. The verse I was mentioning earlier in Revelation, the 17th chapter. It says, Revelation chapter 17 and verse 8, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. Okay, the so-called white man was not in all of Europe. He didn't ascend out of the bottomless pit, meaning out of Europe. Okay, he ascended out of the Caucasus Mountains and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Why does it say was and is not and yet is? Okay. Was because it's just the Roman Empire back on earth, and is not because at that point it's going to be destroyed, this whole system, when Yahushua comes back, and yet is because it was present at that time. Okay, at the time that John was prophesying. So it's the beast that was and is not. We see that in the scriptures is referring to when someone is not, meaning they're dead. They've given up the ghost, or the system is done. Okay, but yet is, because it is right now, but it's soon to be not, and it was. All right. Hopefully that makes sense to brothers and sisters. But if we have, see how much time we got. All right, so what we'll do, we'll break up this first part, essentially going over verses 1 and 2, and then we're gonna finish up more going into what the bottomless pit is, and while from my perspective, it's referring to the Caucasus Mountains. All right, and not all of Europe, or if you haven't even been exposed to that, the bottomless pit being all of Europe, you may not know what I'm referring to, but that is it for this first part. Lord willing, it was edifying. And with that, I bid everyone a mighty shalom. Peace.